we head back to Peter, who's going to break up with Abby. He's realized that he wants more maturity from his relationships and that drugs, alcohol, and hanging out aren't all he wants from a relationship. Abby is very understanding, as they often are in shows and movies. I mean, has anyone ever had a breakup go this well?
Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Welcome back to another episode of The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the next episode of the Mindy Project. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, I'm going to give you a brief agenda here. We start with the Potent Notables, which are just a couple interesting facts or tidbits that I found out about the episode or series. Then I do the episode overview, which is just me talking about everything that happened in the episode, so spoiler alert. And then I do the rank, where I rank the episode based on 5 categories on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, all to find out what are the best sitcoms of all time. And today we're going to be ranking the 7th episode of the 3rd season of the Mindy Project, titled We Need to Talk About Annette, written by Alina Menken and directed by Michael Weaver. All right, so let's find out how this stacked up, starting with the Potent Notables.
Potent Notables.
So the 7th episode of the 3rd season aired Tuesday, November 11th, 2014. Mindy went from a fairly decent 2.8 million viewers last week, back down to 2.5 million this week. But still looking up, considering it's usually hovering around 2.2 million. So go Mindy. My other and final Potent Notable was one that I couldn't actually confirm, but I don't think anyone is coming to the rank as the paragon of fact and truth, so I'm just gonna say it anyway. The version of Danger Zone that Mindy plays is a sound-alike because apparently the license for Danger Zone cost too much for the budget of this episode. I couldn't find anywhere where it actually said that that was true, but it was out there, so there you go. So those are the Potent Notables. Let's go to the episode overview. So the cold open to the episode this time is Mindy and Danny watching a movie on a laptop while lying in bed. Seems like sort of innocuous relationship stuff with Mindy acting scared and whatnot. But then we get to the crux of it when Danny realizes that the movie they're watching is actually still in theaters. And Mindy's like, yeah, I stole it from the internet. This great website, videodump.alqaeda.com. The Al-Qaeda part is what got me. But Danny's like, no, that's stealing. And so now we're unknowingly introduced to the theme. Danny is a rule follower, and Mindy is okay with bending them. After the opening credits, we get a little bit of setup for where this episode is headed, when we see Mindy and Danny hanging out with Annette, Danny's mom, and her friend Dot. Apparently Annette is starting a senior swim aerobics class, but doesn't have a bathing suit. Now this is the kind of thing that Mindy absolutely must rectify. So she suggests that her and Annette should go shopping together. Before we get to see how the shopping is going to turn out, we got to head to the B story though. And the B story is all about Peter again. And they've actually brought back Abby from the previous episode. They hooked up. As Peter says, we just had a night of crazy sex. Now it's time for the punishment. Where do you want to go for brunch? Now this made me laugh, but I have to say, I like brunch. Is that weird? I like breakfast food anytime, and I certainly like the idea of sleeping in. So to me, that's just late breakfast. What about you guys out there? You guys brunch fans? Is it just me? Anyway, it just so happened that Abby doesn't care about brunch either. But if she had been, this wouldn't have been the best way to approach it, Peter. Time for the punishment? Damn. So when Abby asks him why he would suggest brunch, he just says that he wants to do whatever she wants, and then throws out a whole bunch of funny suggestions. Like, do you want to go to spin class? Or do you want me to meet your friend's new baby? Or do you want me to put together some shelves? Now this is all good stuff, but she actually agrees with what Peter wants to do, which is drink some hard lemmies and make some outlandish football bets. I don't really care about the hard lemmies, but the outlandish football bets sound fun. Well, now we head back to the office, but we're actually still on the B story, because Peter walks in excited to tell Tamara how much he likes Abby. He's basically saying how awesome she is, but it's not just Tamara that's hearing it, the entire team is there. And Danny's gonna be like, Peter, don't screw it up, man, because finding a girl that's low maintenance, just wants to hang out, doesn't have a lot of drama, and doesn't need much pampering is hard to find. Naturally, Mindy jumps in here and is like, oh, you're not pampered? Why don't you give Morgan one of your 9,000 moisturizers? Now, obviously, this is rhetorical to prove a point, but Morgan, of course, is like, no thanks, I'm wet all the time. Can always count on Morgan for a silly joke. Not only does Danny say something, but Jeremy is going to chime in as well. And just to catch up anyone who hasn't been following along, Jeremy essentially stole Peter's girlfriend in previous episodes. And said girlfriend was Peter's first serious relationship. But anyway, he's going to end up saying he prefers a relationship where he's being challenged. And then Peter's like, yeah, I tried dating a girl like that once. And guess what? She left me for you. So I'm going to go ahead and stay on the path I'm on. It's sort of strange the lack of awareness that Jeremy has about this situation. After that, though, is when we get to see the shopping with Mindy and Annette. They're having a nice moment. Annette likes Mindy for her son because she thinks Mindy's kind of a spark plug. A nice contrast for Danny's uptightness, that he needs someone to mess with him. As a matter of fact, she said that she used to prank Danny on April Fools every year, that she was dead. Not gonna win Mom of the Year for that one, Annette. Kid's got daddy issues and his single mom is pretending to be dead on him. Yikes! But Mindy's gonna go pay for everything that Annette picked out, and the clerk is trying to convince Mindy to get a store card. What's alarming to me is that Mindy says that her credit is terrible and that she'd just end up getting declined if she were to apply. I mean, you're making doctor money and you can't keep up with your credit? That's not good, Mindy. But while she's giving Danny's social security number to get the store card, she catches Annette shoplifting. What does Annette take? A bomber jacket that looks like it's straight out of Top Gun. And when they go back to the office, Mindy really wants to tell Danny, but Annette is gonna give Danny this bomber jacket and he is just absolutely thrilled about it. But after the celebration of getting the jacket and him talking about Top Gun, he's gonna be like, Mindy, what did you want to talk to me about? But she chickens out. He was so excited about it, she just didn't have the heart to tell him that it was stolen, and not just stolen, but stolen by his mother. She has to think of something to say, so the best she can come up with is, oh, nothing, I was just gonna say that your mom is really keeping her body tight. Which Danny is right about when he says that's a weird thing to say. Of course, Morgan's gonna disagree with it being weird and just say, yeah, she is, and bite his lip. Also, we found out last episode that Mindy doesn't know what The Godfather is, and in this episode, she says she hasn't seen Top Gun. What? Then we take a sort of weird turn, as if they couldn't find a clean transition back to the B story. Either way, Mindy is now meeting Abby, and the first thing she does is, of course, tell her that she's got a romance novel idea that she'd like to sell to Abby. The idea? It's Twilight, but Mindy's the girl. That's the whole idea. The actress playing Abby, Allison Tolman, plays this part great. Her face is saying so much that she doesn't even want to hear this idea. But she still ends up coming off as affable somehow. She tells Mindy, you should write it. And Mindy, of course, is like, I knew it. Thanks. My boyfriend says I'm a terrible writer. But then Abby's gonna start mentioning this 24-hour dance party that Tamara got her and Peter tickets to. Peter seems like he's excited at the idea of going, but unfortunately he's on call, which means he can't party. And he says that if he knew he wasn't gonna be able to party while he was on call, he wouldn't have become a doctor. Mindy comes to the rescue though. She's like, hey, I'll cover you. You gotta go to this dance party. Abby's gonna be like, well, you're gonna need to cover for him for a while because it's gonna take a week for him to recover. And then the camera sort of closes up on Peter's face and he's got this like look on his face where he's clearly not excited about it. I didn't know where this turned for him. Anyway, we're gonna head back to the A story, and Danny is just living up his dreams of being in Top Gun with his bomber jacket. He's got aviator sunglasses now too. He's really got the look. But Mindy's gonna run off and ask Jeremy for advice on the whole bomber jacket theft thing, which he is super eager to give, by the way. Like, he basically hangs up with a client because Mindy just happens to mention that she has a question about etiquette. Now, I don't know that asking the guy who steals a coworker's girlfriend and then continues to talk about it with said coworker is the best person to ask for advice when it comes to etiquette. His recommendation is that she definitely not tell Danny about Annette's kleptomania. Nothing good comes from shining light on a familial scandal. He says in Britain we have an expression, keep calm and don't mention Uncle Susan in the attic. Well, armed with this advice, she's determined not to say anything. But then she walks into Morgan being upset with Tamara because she lost something that was an expression of his love. And Mindy thinks this might be an engagement ring and immediately says she won't be available for the wedding whenever it is. Turns out it was just a charm bracelet from a drugstore, but apparently that took 3 months worth of Morgan's salary. Mindy, shocked, is like, God, we pay you so little. And he's like, hello? I'm on a poster for a poverty campaign. But Mindy's gonna help out. She's like, Tamara, you should retrace your steps. And Tamara's like, well, the last place I remember having it is that I was showing it to Danny's mom. Of course, now Mindy is convinced that Annette has stolen the bracelet. So she goes to Annette's house to try to get the bracelet back and do so without it coming off that she's accusing Annette of stealing. Naturally, it doesn't work and Annette just gets indignant, especially when it turns out that Tamara just had the bracelet on her ankle. So Annette definitely didn't take it. Anyway, Annette's gonna call Danny and tell him what happened. And Danny thinks this is the worst thing that Mindy has done. She's gonna have to go to a guilt dinner with Annette, where Annette is going to hammer her with guilt all night. But this dinner means that Mindy won't be able to cover for Peter. Because of this, Peter's gonna have to go to this dance party sober. And apparently he's never hung out with Abby sober. Now, I'm not saying anything about the lifestyle. If that's the way you wanna live, fine. But they really didn't give that impression about Abby in the previous episode. So it feels like a little bit of a stretch here. Now this news is being dropped on Peter by Danny in the locker room as he's getting dressed for the 24-hour dance party. He's wearing some brightly colored clothing items, and Danny is really digging the way he looks. So we head to the dance party, and it's becoming fairly clear that Peter isn't enjoying it sober. He ends up getting a text from Jeremy that says that one of his patients is in labor, and so he's got to go. Abby's like, oh, come back when you can. You know what? Bring the baby. Now from there, we head to the guilt dinner. Annette is really laying it on thick with the prayer she does before dinner. Dear Lord, please help us find it in our hearts to forgive the most terrible of crimes, the wrongful accusations leveraged against an elderly innocent. Please spare Mindy your wrath, basically. She takes a few more digs, and Mindy just can't handle it anymore, and she eventually tells everybody that she saw Annette steal the jacket. But Annette's quick on her feet. She says, oh, my brain gets foggy when I don't take my fish oil. And then when she realized she had taken it without paying for it, she went back and paid for it. And of course, now Mindy's feeling a little sheepish, and she's starting to make Danny feel guilty. And Danny's like, no, Mom, don't, it's okay, and gives her a hug. But when he gives her the hug, her watch gets caught on Danny's jacket, and when she wrenches it away, it breaks the seal on the ink pack on the jacket. So Danny ends up getting a whole bunch of blue ink all over. Of course, the problem here is that I don't see how Danny could have possibly not noticed this ink tag. But the gig is up. It's obvious that she's a shoplifter now. And I love that Mindy rubs it in, especially when she's like, I'm going to go get my purse and then need to make sure all my money is in it. But Danny's going to insist that his mom return the jacket and apologize, which Annette says, if it's all the same to you, I'd rather not. He essentially makes her do it. Him, his mom, and Mindy all go back to this store and end up meeting kind of a hard-ass clerk here. This clerk is going to be like, hey, this jacket was over $500, so this is a felony. And even when Danny offers to pay for it, she's basically like, nah, I think we're just gonna get you in trouble. But Mindy's gonna take this moment to give Danny a speech. It's all about how this is family and you're not gonna let your mom go to jail over this. So they need to run. She makes the point that when our son gets in trouble for a bar fight in the Hamptons, I'm gonna be the one that drives him to Mexico in a chicken truck. What are you gonna be doing? And Danny ultimately agrees, so they run. After, I guess, the second theft, we head back to Peter, who's gonna break up with Abby. He's realized that he wants more maturity from his relationships and that drugs, alcohol, and hanging out aren't all he wants from a relationship. Abby is very understanding, as they often are in shows and movies. I mean, has anyone ever had a breakup go this well?
Happy endings only happen in the movies.
It has never gone this well for me. Anyway, she leaves, but then she comes back like a second later and is like, Peter, what's shaking? And he's like, what? And she says, I'm sorry, was I just in here? I'm so high. Of course, wrapping up the B story isn't how we're going to end it, though. We've got to end it with the A story. So we head back to Danny and Mindy, and Danny is acknowledging that he's still all about the rules, but the number one rule should be family comes first. And Mindy, although she tells him that she just bought her first digital song, tells him that she likes that he's kind of turning into a bad boy. So they start to get amorous, and Danny's like, oh yeah, you want to see a bad boy? And he puts the stolen jacket back on. And so Mindy's like, well, you're going to like the song that I downloaded then. And she starts to play it, and it's Danger Zone. And Danny just, oh! And basically just knocks her away from him. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna head out while he's dancing to this song. But after she walks away, Danny goes, like he's on a radio, hey Goose, it's Maverick. You want to have some sex tonight? And the last thing we hear is a voiceover from Mindy in the bedroom saying, don't call me Goose. Anyway, it's a fun note to end on. That's the whole episode. Let's find out how it ranked.
Oh, rank.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I dive into the rankings here, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, first category is story. So the A story was a bit thin, in that it's really just that Mindy happens to see Annette shoplifting, and then she can't decide whether or not to tell Danny. The B story was actually a little bit more meaty, because it's an arc of Peter realizing that he's more mature than he thought he was, that he's at a point in his life where he wants different things. Because the A story is obviously the main story, it does drop the score a bit, but the B story keeps it from dropping too far. I gave it a 2.75. So that brings us to acting. Everyone's great. Rhea Perlman is a great choice to be Danny's mom. She's fantastic. Mindy continues to be a perfect Mindy. Who'da thunk it? Chris Messina is doing great as Danny. I love Zosha and Ike. I mean, there really wasn't anything wrong with this episode from an acting standpoint, so I gave it a 5. That brings us to dialogue. Mindy Project is always funny, but I think this one slogged slightly. There were periods of it where I was just kind of like, well, I'm watching this. I wasn't super engaged. I wasn't unengaged. It was just kind of watching me, really. Now, there weren't a ton of those moments, and it was always clever. I mean, it still made me laugh a lot. So I gave it a 3.5. So that brings us to episode coherence. One of the problems I have with this is that I don't think they would have had a problem with them paying for the jacket when they came back to the store. Like, I think if I were to shoplift something and then go back and say sorry and pay for it, I think they'd just take my money at that point. I could be wrong, I don't know. Another portion of this that I felt was off was that they said Peter and Abby had never hung out sober, and that Abby is kind of like a drug and alcohol theme. It's fine if she is, but that wasn't the impression that they gave us in the previous episode. It just felt a little incongruous. And as mentioned in the episode overview, the transition between A and B story in the middle felt a little bit off, like it just almost felt like herky-jerky. And finally, how did Danny not feel or see the ink pack on his bomber jacket? Now, none of these are like huge things, but they're enough. So I ended up giving it a 2.5. Well, that brings us to character relatability. And it's hard to relate to shoplifting, but I'm not going to pretend like people don't chronically shoplift. Also, Peter realizing that he's outgrown the party life is very relatable, as is the party life not being outgrown by Abby. I mean, if you can make a living where you only have to work 2 hours like a day or whatever, I get it. Anyway, it was a very relatable episode. I gave it a 4.5. So some up and down rankings here, but a decent laugh counter, which Mindy usually gets. We'll keep it in the top 3 tiers, and it got me 22 times. So that puts the grand total up to a 40.25, which puts the episode in the meaning of life. As for the series average, it goes to a 36.98, which keeps it firmly in the Holy Grail. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your rankings in the comments. I'd be curious to see where you guys are at on this one, especially the laugh counters. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out other Mindy Project episode rankings that I've done, or any other sitcom or movie episodes that I've done. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, you can do that on the website at therankpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankpodcast.com. For those of you who really want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/therankpodcast, but I will leave you with this. Mindy ends up finding a gun above the cabinets in Danny's apartment. Why does he have it there? He just loves Top Gun.
It's so bad.
I don't think it's the worst one I've done, but it's close. It's close.
I don't even know anymore.
So she goes to Annette's house to try to get the bracelet back and do it without... Cut! So she goes to Annette's house to try to get the bracelet back. I almost said black.
Cut! Take 3.
So she goes to Annette's house to try to get the bracelet back. Get the bracelet back, not black.
Whoa, 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 whoa.